hospice nurse, and I'm going to tell you why dying people don't need to eat at the end of their life. In fact, why most dying people don't want to eat at the end of their life. When a person goes on hospice, they have a terminal condition with a life expectancy of 6 months or less. The earliest thing that starts to happen as a person moves towards the end of their life is that they sleep more and they eat less. This is perfectly normal and it's to be expected. Dying is a process. Our bodies systematically shut down. In order to complete the process, the heart and lungs, the vital organs, have to stay working until the end. So the body will naturally go into energy conservation mode. Digestion is a process in our bodies that takes the most amount of energy. So our bodies intuitively are going to start to slow digestion down. More simply put, if you think about what food is for, aside from that it tastes good, we like to eat, we like to socialize over a meal with our friends, it's actually meant to fuel our body. Food is fuel. And when our bodies are shutting down, we don't need fuel to keep them going anymore. All that being said, if a person on hospice wants to eat, we never withhold food. I have encountered people who were dying who wanted to eat up until their last day. In fact, my dad had an amazing feast on his last day of life. This is my dad holding me, a baby, with a cigarette in his hand. Don't do that. Don't hold a baby with a cigarette in your hand, and don't smoke because smoking will kill you. And eventually it is what took my dad's life. When my dad was 69 years old, he developed idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, probably from smoking, maybe from being a jet mechanic in the military. Eventually he ended up in the hospital and was very, very sick. Now, my dad had been on some treatments that caused him to have diabetes, and then he also developed a syndrome that made him have to be on a fluid restriction. So he was really hungry and he was really thirsty. My dad was a big guy. He grew up in the deep south of Texas, really poor, and never had enough to eat as a child. So even though he became successful as an adult, he always kind of held on to food. He loved to eat. Well, he was really suffering in the hospital, not being able to eat whatever he wanted. And he kept saying, "I'm so thirsty, I'm so thirsty." It's a long story about how we finally got to hospice, but we finally got the hospice consult. So on that day when the hospice nurse came and we were able to sign my dad up for hospice, as soon as he was on hospice, my sister and I sprang into action. We went and got him a huge cup of Starbucks. He loves Starbucks coffee. And then we went to this restaurant called the Golden Corral, which if you've ever been there, it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I always consider it an all-you-can-eat meat buffet because they have so much meat. And my dad loved meat. That was his favorite thing. So we piled up a to-go container with just tons of his favorite meats. And then we got my mom a salad because she's tiny and she's a little health food nut. And my mom and dad had dinner together. The plan was to take my dad home the next day, and I was going to be his hospice nurse. But sometimes things don't go as planned. And my dad died that night at midnight. So sometimes people do want to eat. Obviously, my dad wanted to eat, and we were so happy to be able to get him his last meal. We let people on hospice have as much or as little as they want whenever they want. If they want ice cream for breakfast, that's okay. If they want to have a cheeseburger, that's okay. If they only want a bite of something, that's okay too. We let their bodies guide us when it comes to eating. We should offer food, but we should never force or coerce someone to eat. Now, forcing is easy to identify because you're usually literally holding a spoon and shoving it towards their mouth and telling them to open up. But sometimes people don't understand what coercing somebody to eat means. And that is just badgering them. You need to eat. You need to keep up your strength. You've got to eat. It's really going to be stressful for a person who's not feeling like eating if you're trying to get them to eat. They want to do it to make you happy. It's just going to be stressful for everybody. So really, you need to let them dictate how much they want to eat. Not only can convincing somebody to eat make them feel stressed out, but if they do eat, it can physically affect them. It can make them feel nauseated, they can feel bloated, they can even feel pain in their belly. So it's just best to avoid convincing somebody that they need to eat if they're not feeling like eating. I've been a hospice nurse for a long time, and I have never had a patient who died from starvation. People usually do not want to eat at the end of their life, and that is normal and it's okay. It's important to remember that your person is not going to die from starvation, they're going to die from their disease.